Today's today Shabbos Bereshis. We are up to the two dots in Daf Kuf Chav Gimel Amud Aleph. So it's about 15 lines in the wide lines. The last two words of the lines Bayim and Nei. And we were discussing about the last thing we were discussing about was a B'chor get double portion. Does the B'chor get equal to everyone else, and then just another portion of that? Like so, now he's made up of two people. Or actually, do we treat a b'chor that he gets 2/3 of the entire lot, and the rest of the siblings have to divide the remaining third? We concluded that Ephraim and Menashe, that merely you get an extra portion as if you were two people. So, so now, because Yosef was given a gift from Yaakov, that Yosef was treated like the b'chor. So now the Gemara is going to focus on that. Says the Gemara. Boye Menei Rab Chelbai asked from Rab Shmuel Bar Nachmani. Maro Yaakov, what did Yaakov see? Shenotal b'chayre Reuven. He took away the firstborn right from Reuven within a son of Yosef, and he handed it over to Yosef because Yosef got a double portion. Two of his sons, each one was treated like another person. So Yosef was treated like two people. So the law, even though Reuven at the end of the day was still the b'chor, but as far as the Yerusha is concerned, it was transferred to Yosef. Why? Says the Gemara, Ma'ara, what are you asking? Why did he take away from Reuven? It says here that he transferred the beds of his father, and therefore he was punished, and he forfeited the right to the b'chora. So the Gemara said, my question really was not why did we take it away from Reuven? The question is, why was it given to Yosef? Why was it given to Yosef? Could have given it to anybody else. Could have been given to the firstborn of the other two of Bila or Zilpa. Why was it given to Yosef? In other words, I remember reading somewhere. It says like this: the question is not just a very simple question. Why was it given to Yosef? It's with a pilpul, and that is, in a nutshell, that the difference between a concubine and a wife is that a concubine doesn't have a ksuva, and according to one opinion, Sanag and Rashi and the Rambam, doesn't have kedushin either. No ksuva, no kedushin. So as far as Jewish law is concerned, a pelegesh, a concubine, is not considered a married woman. So according to Jewish law, Reuven did nothing wrong, even if you take it literally, that he had a relation with one of Yaakov's concubines. It's not a pelegesh, it didn't do an avera. But but by goyim, there is no kedushin by goyim. By goyim, if they live together, then that's like Shir Mitzvah. If they live together, they're considered married. So by a goyim, there's no difference between a pelegish or a wife. It's the same thing. So the question basically is asked is, why, if you say that Reuven had to be punished, that means you believe what he did was wrong. And the only way you can learn that what he did was wrong was that there's no difference between a concubine and a wife. So Reuven, therefore, committed adultery with this woman, with one of the wives of his father, of Yaakov. If that's the case, then why did you give the b'chora to Yosef? Because he was the firstborn from Rachel. You took away from Leah Rachel. Why not give it to Bilhah's son or to Zilpa's son? You're telling me that as far as a goy is concerned, there's no difference between a concubine and a wife. So therefore, why give it to Rachel? Give it to one of the Pelagshim. It's exactly the same thing. Unless you're going to tell me no, that Rachel was much more important than a Pelegish, because she's a married woman. Pelegish is not. If you say that Pelegish is not important, it's because you're following the laws of the Yid, because it's questionable the status of the Yidden prior to Matan Torah. Were they Yidden, or were they just Goyim who were frum? So if you're telling me that Rachel is more important, that's why you gave it to Yosef, that means that you're following the laws of Yidden. If you follow the laws of Yidden, then a Pelegesh, Reuven did nothing wrong. So why did Reuven forfeit? Why did he lose the b'chor in the first place? That's the Gemara's question. So either or, it does something's not right here. Says the Gemara, someone asks, why do you give it to Yosef? Says the Gemara, I'll tell you why. I'll tell you what's compared to the Bava Basra is an owner, he raised an orphan in his house. And believe it or not, the Bava Basra here is Yosef, and the orphan is Yaakov because Yaakov came to Mitzrayim and Yosef took care of him. The Yamim Ha'eshir Oisa Yosem. After a while, that Yosem became wealthy. Why? Because now he had the opportunity to give brachas, and he took away the b'chorah of Reuben became available because Reuben's sin that he did. Well, Amman, he said, "What should I do with this gift? Ahinu lebalabayis. I'll give it to the person who was so generous to me, and that's why he gave it to Yosef." Malays, he says to him, "Let me ask you a question. And the Elav the Chot Reuben, if Reuben would not have sinned, if Reuben would not have sinned, he wouldn't have a gift to give to Yosef. If Yosef was his benefactor, then he would have given a gift to Yosef anyway. In this case, he's giving nothing. He took from Reuben to give to Yosef. What kind of gift is that? A gift is when I give you something of my own. Not I take it from one person, punish, and I give that to you. That's not a gift at all. So if he was giving a gift to Yosef, it wouldn't have been b'chorah. So the Gemara then says, so why was it given to Yosef? El Rabbi Yonasan, Rabbi, your own Rebbe, Rabbi Yonasan, Rabbi Shmuel Achmei's Rebbe said something else. Omar, truth of the matter is, the b'chorah should come out of Rachel. The Chesiv, it says, Eilu tells Yaakov Yosef. First, we know that Rachel was the primary wife, the primary reason why Yaakov married any of them. And inside that, it says a pasuk, Eilu tells Yaakov. Who was Yaakov's real, offspring? Yosef. That's the one that he cherished the most. Ella shekadmasa Leah berachim. Why did Leah have children before Rachel? Because she pleaded for it, as we'll soon see. And because Rachel displayed an enormous kind of modesty, Hechzira HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Hashem returned, took the b'chorah away from Rachel, not because Rachel did anything wrong, but because Leah pleaded for it and really wanted it, but then gave it back to Rachel because on account of what Rachel did. Now Gemara is going to explain what actually happened. Micah and Leah, but what do you mean she cried and asked, pleaded for Rachel? See what it says. The Eine Leah Rakas, the eyes of Leah were very tender. My Rakas, what do you mean very tender? Ilay Rakas Mamish, it was really tender. The Torah does not even talk about a non-kosher animal using the word tamei. The Torah says the chesiv min habehema haTorah. It says I want you to put onto the from the kosher animals and umin habehema asher einena Torah. We had them giving psachim. Instead of saying behema hatmeya, it said asher einena Torah. An extra 8 letters. The Torah did not want to use foul language. So the Torah was so careful when it comes to animals. Begnus tzaddik talk a derogatory way in a demeaning way, but tzaddikim said her eyes were tender. She cried all the time, like some kind of deformity. Ella Rabloza, it wasn't. Maybe Rabloza says shematun. You know what rakas means? She received the most unbelievable gifts. She received the gift of kahuna, which is forever. The gift of Levium, which is what do you call it? Forever. And the gift of Malchus Yehuda, which Dav Melech Yisrael Chai B'Kayim. All the other ones, like Shaul, was all temporary. Rav says no. It was very tender. She cried a lot, but it wasn't. It's not a demeaning thing. It's not demeaning at all. It's actually a praise. She once heard people standing on the crossroads. People, they were saying the following: 2 daughters are to Rivka, and 2 sons are to what is it called? And 2 sons are to Rivka, Esav and Yaakov, and 2 daughters are to Lavan, Rachel, Leah and Rachel. Everyone assumed the older for the older and the younger. She was sitting in the road, and she had no idea who these cousins were. Tell me something about the older one. This is Leah, because that's the one that was assigned to her, as everybody thought. Each Rao is evil. Melastim B'dias, he robs people. So then she said, Cotton Mamai, what the younger one? Each Tam Yeshiva, he's a consummate gentleman, he sits in the tent, he's honest, and he learns and so on. So she cried until either her eyelashes or eyebrows, different opinions, fell out. So therefore she was crying with L'Shem Shemayim. It says, Hashem saw that she was hated. What do you mean she was hated? Hated by who? Mama, she was hated. We don't want to talk derogatory, the meaning about an animal. We're going to talk about a tzedekis. She hated the deeds of Esav, and that's why she cried so much. So Vayiftach Ezrach Hashem opened up her womb, and therefore she had children first. On account of her crying, she was zeichet to have the children first. Says the Gemara knew. So what's the story? He said, and then Rachel repeated, "My sneeze hoise above Rachel." What was this modesty by Rachel? The Chesiv said, Yaakov said to Rachel, "Ki achi of the Yehu." I want you to know who I am. I am the brother of your father. Her father was Lavan. Yaakov was not a relation to Lavan. He ben Rivkahu, v'haloi ben achoisavihu. She should have said that the sister of your father, and I'm their son, not the brother of your father. What's going on here? Ella Amalad, they were actually having a conversation. And they were alluding to something else. He said to her, "Min savidly marry me." Amalai, she said, Rachel said, "In, yes. Miu Abaramoy, my father is a schemer, and he's very deceptive, dishonest. Lo yochlele, and you will not be able to overcome him. Amalah, Maidam said, what's he gonna do? What possible trick? Amalah, she said, well, Isli Achta Dikshiti, when I have an older sister, but Laiminsa Mekama, he no way in the world he'll allow me to marry before her. So he's gonna give you Leah. Amalah, so Yaakov said, I'm just as good as him when it comes to deception. Amalei, so already asked him, Yisharul Tzaddik was good, but a Musa is it permitted for a tzaddik to go down the path of beguiling of cheating? Was it in? Yes. Sometimes on occasion you're allowed to. Because it says in the Pasuk, Im Geva Titavar, with an honest person you gotta be honest, but Mikish with a cruel person, with somebody who is not straight, is Titapel. You do the same thing, but only limited to make sure they don't cheat you, not some, you're not allowed to go out. So very interesting. So Yaakov clearly knew that Lavan was going to give him the older girl. And if you remember more Kedusha there, that Yaakov, Lavan said to Yaakov, "Lo yasa came b'mekaimenu." This is the wrong thing to do. That the older should go to the younger, and the younger should marry first. But Yaakov clearly held there's nothing wrong. In fact, even after Rachel told Yaakov that the older should marry the older, and the younger should marry the younger, Yaakov said, no problem. So Yaakov clearly disagreed with Lavan, and he believed that that a younger girl can marry before the older one, clearly. And yet there in Rabbeinu Tam and Taisus brings a story where two people met at a Yarid, at some fair, and they decided they one person had a few sons, one a few daughters, and the guy was giving all these wonderful praises, and they made a match. It turned out to be that the second daughter was very pretty and beautiful and smart, but the older one was not. And the father of the girl said, well, we made a match, we made a shidduch, everything else was opinion, but the older one has to marry first because lo yasa came bim kaimenu. And the other one said, but Yaakov says, yes, you can. And Rabbeinu Tam paskin like Lavan. Astonishing that, it's the older one. Anyway, Masala Simonim. So Yaakov and Rachel came up with Simonim. According to one opinion, the Medrash was actually, he told her the three mitzvahs that women have of Neirah, Shabbos, Kodesh, and Nidr. That was the Simonim that he gave for her to know. Kikama Ailala, the Leah, then when Leah was brought in, when Rachel saw what her father was doing, she was very worried that her sister will be humiliated in public. I will give her over my simon. It says, in the morning it turned out to be Leah, but called that Hashtalam Leah. At night he had no idea it was Leah, even though we know that a blind person is allowed to be married because you have Tfiya's coil, he recognized the voice of his wife. But here it was the first night. So therefore he didn't have a chance yet to get to know Rachel intimately, so he didn't yet have a chance to recognize. And according to the Medrash and Eicha, actually, the Medrash and Eicha said that that Rachel was hiding under the bed and Rachel was doing all the talking. So Leah didn't even speak. And that's why Yaakov thought it was Rachel. To that extent. Because the Simonim that he gave to Leah, he didn't know till that morning. And the Medrash says that it was the schus of Rachel that the Eden, will be saved from Golus and everything else, because Rachel said, my Mesiris Nefesh was greater than anybody else's. All those people who died, they died, of Kiddush Hashem, but it was over. I was prepared. I had no idea that Yaakov was going to marry, is prepared to live with me. I thought that, he wants one wife. If it turns out to be Leah, he'll remain married with Leah. In fact, he might be so angry with me, he wouldn't even want to talk to me again. So she was prepared to give up her whole life only so that her sister shouldn't be humiliated. Shouldn't be humiliated. And and therefore he says to them that that's chus, that I was prepared to live a whole life and watch my sister live with a man that I was supposed to marry, just so that she shouldn't be embarrassed. And that's chus. You should kol barama nishma and all that barach. Says the Gemara. Talking about a Chibur I have another question. When it says there that 70 people came to Mitzrayim, but if you count them clearly, the was only 69. Amalei said to Umar, Dina had a sister, a twin, and therefore there was 70. It says the S Dina Bite, and his daughter Dina also came down. So the S and includes someone else, a twin. So to Umar Binyamin, if so, there was a twin. If you can say every time there's the S, there's a twin. So Binyamin also had a twin. See, because there's a pasuk on Ahmed Bey's on top. The Es Binyamin, it says the Es Binyamin and Binyamin Achiv Benim. It says and. No, if every time it says and, it means there was another twin. So Binyamin also had a twin. And Taisus already said before that we know that every single one of the brothers had a twin, and we're assuming that they all passed away before they went to Mitzrayim. That's why they're not counted. Omari said, so Rabbi Abba said, you're forcing me to say something that I didn't want to say. Magolius Toiva Hoysaviyadi had a beautiful, precious stone. But Atamavakish after many, you want to take it away from me because you want me to share with you what happened there. This is the Yechevet Shahayrosa Baderech. She was conceived traveling to Mitzrayim, but Viledosa Ben Achayim. She was only born once she by the wall entering Mitzrayim. Now it says Ashiyolda Oisa Lelevi was born to Levi in Mitzrayim. The Chayda, what's a part of the Mitzrayim is extra because Joseph was born to Levi. Lelei Dosa Mitzrayim. She was born in Mitzrayim, but the Ein Hayrasa Mitzrayim, but she was conceived before Mitzrayim. Now, interesting the difference between the Rashbam and Rabbeinu Gershom, because in a way it says in this forum in other Gemaras, if you have knowledge, you're not allowed to keep it to yourself. You have to share it. And yet he's saying it. I don't want to. I didn't really want to share it. I had no intention of sharing it. So the Rashbam says it twice. First, he says he only said it. He didn't want to. He withheld it because he wanted to tease out of them questions. The Chadudi the boy, he wanted them to come and ask questions. And then the Rashbam says further, the reason why he said it is to make sure that they realize how precious this statement is. This is a Magolius, and you're forcing me. But Abayin Negation takes literally. He says he didn't want to share this. He wanted to keep it to himself. He had no intention of sharing it. Which you need explanation because if you have knowledge, you have to share it with others. It says when Rachel gave birth to Yosef, when did they decide to pack the bags and leave? Only when they gave birth to Yosef. Only then, when Yosef was born, he said, let's pack our bags. Let's pack our bags. Interesting, my father used to say, it says in the Torah that first Yaakov calls in his wives, Rachel and Leah, and he tells them, your father cheated me and your father gave me a hard time. Let's pack our bags. Enough is enough. And then he says, and by the way, Hashem told me to leave as well. Shouldn't have been the other way around. If Hashem, the Malach told me you have to leave, then that's it. That's why we're leaving. And if you want to add something else afterwards, fine. But the order, the way he said it to them was, first of all, he said to them that life is too difficult. Let's move on. By the way, Hashem told us to leave. So my father said that maybe the pshat is, Yaakov is teaching them that everything that happens in life is hashgacha pratis. These are all messages from Hashem. And he's saying that your father is treating us harshly and we're having a difficult time is not because Stam on the Weltgerai. It's because that in itself is a message from Hashem that's time for us to leave. That is what you have to learn from your surroundings and interpret what's going on to understand hashgacha pratis, what we have to do. And that's what he meant to say. That since your father is dealing the way it is, it means we have to leave. That's exactly what the Eibusher wants us to do. Because everything that happens does not happen by chance. Anyway, so why only when Yosef was born did they pack the bags, not before that? He realized that it's only Yosef who could vanquish Esav. Shneimar says, "Well, base Yaakov Eish, Yaakov's family, what Yaakov's fire, base Yosef Lahava, and Yosef was a flame. Who base Esav Lakash. Yosef was a big fire furnace, and Esav was merely straw. So you need Yosef to destroy. So you ask a question. You're telling me Yosef destroyed Amalek. Well, let me ask you a question from Tanakh, from Divrei Hayamim. Esau, I'll ask you a question. It says over there, first it says in Shmuel Yakim David, that David has smitten the Amalekim from Mahaneshev ad Edith from one evening to the next evening, Lemachros on the following day. And who did it? David. David from Yehuda. It wasn't Yosef. Amalei, so he said to him, that Karach Nevi'ah, the one who taught you Nevi'im, forgot to like Karach Ksuvim, forgot to teach you Ksuvim. Divrei Yamim is part of the Ksuvim. And the Chsiv, and there it says, in the Pasuk, Belechtoi, when you'll go, El Tziklag, when you go to Tziklag, Noflu Olav the Menashe, when Amalek went to Tziklag, it wasn't only David, it was also members of the Sheva of Menashe attacked him as well. And he goes through all the names, Adna, Yoseved, Yedil, Michal, and Yoseved, Eliov, and Tzalzi, Roshi, Allah, Hashem, Menashe. These are all the leaders for the tribe of Menashe. So David helped out, but without Menashe, it couldn't have happened. Okay, most of it is asking from another pasuk. It says, "Umehem amongst them, Bnei Shimon, the children of Shimon, they went to Haseyir. They went to Haseyir. They were Esav's Anoshim Chamish Meis, 500 people, and it says they will plot you in the Arya or the Fi of Uzil, Bnei Yishi Beroshim, the children of Yishi Beroshim. Clearly, Shevet Shimon did it. It wasn't the Shevet of Yosef. Vayakush is a plate Lamalek, they're smitten the remnants of Molech. Vayeshu Shamayim said, sit until this day. Amar Rabbi Shela said, you think that Yishi is from the tribe of Shimon? Yishi b'nei Menashe. So you're right, there were 500 people there from Shimon. But Yishi was from the tribe of Menashe. The Chsiv could be learned before. B'nei Menashe. Who are the children of Menashe? Chefer the Yishi. Chefer and the Yishi are the children of Menashe. So therefore, without Menashe, without Yosef, it never would have happened. Shimon was there, David, it wouldn't have happened. The Ritva said, by the way, there's no such pasuk. It's the Gemara takes out a whole bunch of words, and the Ritva says the Gemara has a habit of sometimes taking a pasuk and making it suit the point they're trying to make. So they would change the pasuk around, take a few words out, add a few words, and he brings a few examples. Is there a Kiv Egan Gillian Shas we had, I think Masechta Shabbos, where you list a whole bunch of places in Shas where the Gemara brings psukim that we don't actually have. Okay, now that ends the Gadata. Now the Gemara goes back to the laws of the B'chayr. B'chayr is entitled to double portion, and we learn out from a pasuk v'loy mishpat haB'chayr, and he has the laws of B'chayr, and it says v'haya b'yoyim mechilah v'zbanav eis asher yeshlei. You're bequeathing to your children that which you have. So we learn from there that a B'chayr is entitled to a double portion only b'muchzik, only if you actually have it, but not ro, not if that at the moment you don't have it, but let's say somebody owes you money. And if somebody owes this person money and obviously hasn't paid it yet, and then the person dies, the b'chayr does not get a double portion of that money. Definitely, if it's an oral loan, we'll see later if it's a contractual loan, what happens. If it's an oral loan, and therefore, at this point, it's only row. And if it's only row, you don't get a double portion. So comes one of the Gemara here and says, Torah Bamilim. There's a brisa, and we're going to try to explain the brisa. And we're going to see there's an argument between Rebbe and Chachamim. How do we interpret the word ro? How far do we take ro, and how far do we take the word muchzik? Talk about Bilan. Habchoy, noitel bishnayim. Habchoy is entitled to double portion. Let's say there's a kohen, so the child of a kohen is entitled to 24 different matanas that we give to a kohen, including an animal. If you shecht an animal, you have to give to the kohen matanas, which is zroya, the forelegs, the chayim, the cheeks, or the cave of the stomach. These are entitlements to the kohen. That's so the b'chayr gets a double portion of those matanas. In other words, if the father already receives it, obviously he gets a double portion. Whatever is in the father's estate, he gets a double portion. It hasn't been yet given to the father, hasn't been transferred, but it's owed to the father. He's entitled to a double portion. Now, why that isn't considered ra'u, because the father did not receive it yet, so the father doesn't have it yet, the Gemara will explain. Then it says in the Gemara, uv'mekdashim, karbanis. Again, a bit difficult. Karbanis doesn't belong to you, belongs to Hashem. In fact, if you use it for yourself, you're a moyel, you're stealing, So where does karbanis come in? And even kachim kalim, where there's no me'ilah, shlamim. It's a karma shlamim, which is a gift offering, or toida. There's no me'ilah there until after you spray, and then there's me'ilah only on the parts that go on the mizbeach. But still, you're not allowed to use it for yourself. It's not yours. And after you spray it, whatever you're eating, the meat you're eating is mishulchan gavaya kazach. It's Hashem giving you the meat to eat. So where does korbanos come into this double portion? It's not muhsik, we'll soon see. Then he says it. And any improvement, any improvement that the father left behind assets and things improve by itself. Anything which happens by itself is as if it was already there before it happened, because nobody intervened, it just grew. And therefore, we'll see later in the Gemara, a palm tree that became thicker. You still get your double portion of the new palm tree because it's as if muhzik, even though it wasn't fully grown yet when the father was there, but it happened by itself. So it already had all the ingredients already were included. Cases, for example, not we go a bit further. The father left behind a para muhkera. Para muhkera is that he left behind a bull that he made a partner to somebody, he gave to somebody else, you do all the work and everything else, and we'll split the profits 50-50. Those profits are considered as if it comes by itself, because the heirs, the father don't have to do anything, they don't have to invest any money in anything, the money comes by itself. So therefore, it's considered a shevach. I'm telling you now, the Rashbam Shah, Taisa learns that it's like a loan, but we won't talk about Taisa. We'll look like the Rashbam. Or you rent it out to somebody, you hire him, and they pay you a monthly fee. That monthly fee is as if muhzik by the father, and the Khari gets a double portion of that fee. Again, because it happens by itself, there's no work on your part. Or, or, for example, the animal is wandering about somewhere in the pastures, which still mine, is wandering in the pastures, and the yolda, and then the animal gave birth. It happens by itself. The animal gave birth. So this brisa holds b'choy noitel pishnai. Now, whether this thing of the yolda also goes back to para mukeres muskeres, which is what Taisa says. The case of the rented para is it gave birth, but the rent itself, Taisa says, is treated like a loan. Or we follow the Rashbam, who says no. The case of the rent itself is what we're talking about. That's the shvach, the improvement. And the case of the yolda, the animal's out there grazing and he gave birth. Bottom line is, because nobody intervened, it happened by itself. According to this brisa, the b'chor is entitled double portion. It's as if it's muhsin. Says the Gemara, but if Bonu bought after the father passed away, the children decided to build houses, not to crumb, they planted new vineyards, things that weren't around when the father died. You're not entitled to double because this is new stuff. Why should you be entitled to double? You're only entitled to double the muhsik, something which already was there. Says the Gemara, let's go through the entire brisa. What are we talking about? He does it, everyone. If already was given to this person's father, that he already had the foreleg and all that. So pshita, it's now the father's. Of course, is entitled to two portions. If it did not come to the father, then no, it's only a potential. The ein habchoy noitel berok muhzik, and a b'choy is not entitled to row like a muhzik. He's not entitled to it. So why should he get the double portion? Answers the Gemara, Hocha b'makire kuhunas kinam. You know what we're talking about here? We had this in Gittin. We're talking about here makire kuhunas. These are friends, and so are their friends. So we know that they're going to give you. Furthermore, that's the way that Rashbam learns. They when they already shechted the animal when the father was alive, and they said that we are not only they said, they actually made a kinyan. They were mazaka. They said to somebody else who pick up the animal and have in mind our friend the kohen. So he was now. If he was already kohened, so what's the chiddush? Again, it's the father's. Oh, but the thing is, you didn't separate it yet from the animal. You didn't cut the animal apart. So these are called matanas shaloi humu, presents, but you haven't separated them. And we had a kedushin. In other words, a machlekes will have a chulun. If matanas that you didn't separate, is it treated as if it was already separated? And that's the chiddush here. Uksavri holds that matanas shaloi humu kimisha humadamim. It's as if you already gave it to the father, and therefore that's the chiddush here. The chiddush here about matanas. Tosis learns no. Makira kuna means there's no kinyan made here, but because they're loyal friends, and we know that they always give the presents to their father, and because they said already they will give it, just a word. True, if they change their mind, they can, but it's a terrible thing. And because they always do it, then we trust that that word will be fulfilled. It's as if the father already received it, and the father is a muhzik, and that's the chiddush. Okay, next case. Mukdashin, Karbanas, Lavdi Daininu. Karbanas don't belong to the father. Why would the son get a double portion? Even the Karban Shlamim, when it comes to the meat, let's say, it's coming a gift from Hashem. Where it says, we're talking about Kochim Kalim a liba de Rabbi Yisrael Glili. Talk about kachim kalim according to Glili before you shech. What do you mean? A kachim kalim like karma shlamim. What happens if you take a karma shlamim and you give it to a woman and you say, I want you to be mekudesh to me with this karma shlamim? Big machlek is whether she's mekudesh or not. Rabbanan say she's not mekudesh. It's not your animal. The moment you consecrated it, it's Hashem's animal, even though you didn't shecht it yet. So you're not giving her anything of your own. Rabbi Yisrael Glili says, yes, you are mekudesh because the animal is still yours because you're responsible for it. The animal is still yours. So therefore, according to Yisrael Glili, if the person dies, so he's entitled to two parts. The Libra Yisrael Glili, no, my mama Bible. It's time to be learned. Umal b'hashar. It says in the pasuk that if you in this case, you didn't steal from Hashem, but you deviated from Hashem. You're talking about you made, somebody says, oh, I gave you something to mine for me, and the guy swore till the face is blue. You never gave me anything. But the next day he admitted that he swore false. But then he has to bring a carbon and pay a penalty of a fifth. And the pasuk says, Umala mal b'Hashem. Like he betrayed Hashem. Where does Hashem come in the picture? Okay, he made a shvur. So Rabbi Yisrael says, it's more than just a shvur. The rabbis kachim kalim. If he lied about kachim kalim, whether he made this animal a carbon or not, and he swore false, then he admitted he'll have to pay the carbon asham and he'll have to pay that extra fifth. Why? Because it's as if it was your own. Shehain mum and bailin. All of Hashem comes to include even something which Hashem is connected to. It's as if it's your money, and therefore you have to spend. Divi Rabbi Yisrael Glili. Okay, next case number I said. The father left him behind an animal that he rented out, or he did some kind of a partnership with somebody else taking care of it. Or if the animals wandering in the pastures, the Yola and gave birth. The B'choy gets a double portion. Now, question is, why do you need to know both parts? Muskeres is much more remote from the father than Ba'afar. I gave to somebody else is watching it. And how can you say the father is considered a muhsik? And yet somebody else is watching, somebody else is giving you the money is by that other person, and yet you're telling me the father is a muhsik. So surely when the animal is the father's, it's just wandering about and grazing, surely, and then gave birth, surely it's in the father's control, surely that's considered a muhsik. So the question is, once we've established, time is not even in the father's possession. Amit, if somebody else is there and they have to give you money. Shakil, we say that the b'choy is entitled to a double portion. Roya ba'afam b'boya. So the animal's wandering about and grazing, and still the father's complete. Of course, that's considered a mosik. Said no. How come Mashma wants to teach you? There's another point here. When you say that you gave it to somebody else, the b'choy is entitled to a double portion. It has to be similar to the case of grazing. The case of grazing gave birth to a baby calf. It happened by itself. No input from the owner, from anybody. No human intervention. The same thing is when you rent out the animal. If you made a deal with somebody, 50-50, you work with the animal, and like 50-50. If the father pays any other expenses, like for the food, if the children then have to pay any expenses to maintain, even in this partnership, maybe the deal is that a couple of days a week they have to pay for the food, for the feed. If that's what happens, it's no longer memela. It's an investment. An investment, the b'choy no longer is entitled to double portion. He's only entitled to double portion if this was the father's automatically. And that's why we need it. It comes by itself. It costs you nothing. He did nothing, he was grazing out there. Also in the case of Muskeres, the Mele cost, it comes by itself. So too, when you rent it out, it's only if you don't have to do any input at all. You don't have to do any input at all. And but on the other hand, we need to know the case of Muhkeres and Muskeres, because we would have thought that maybe it's not really considered muhsik. Somebody else is holding it. It's a big chiddush to say that even though somebody else is holding on the animal and he's paying your rent, it's considered as if it's in the father's realm, muhzekis. And the reason is because the children don't have to do any input, everything's automatic. The rent that's coming in is automatic. Okay, we'll